So today we're going to look at multiplying fractions. Hopefully for most of us it's a review. There might be a couple of new things in here that we're going to talk about. One thing you're going to see a lot of with dealing with fractions is if they say write the answer in simplest form. Simplest form is where you simplify a fraction to where you can't simplify it anymore. If it says write this answer or fraction in simplest form, that's what you do. And really, unless the question tells you otherwise, just go ahead and start writing your answer in simplest form. We kind of assume that we've got to write our answer this way unless we're told otherwise. And so a couple of things about multiplying fractions. So when we multiply fractions, all we do is multiply the numerators by each other and the denominators, multiply them by each other as well. In other words, do not get a common denominator. Do not get a common denominator. In fact, if you do get a common denominator when multiplying fractions, you're going to get the answer wrong. So you do not want to get that. You just take the top, multiply by the top, bottom, multiply by the bottom. And then always write the product in simplest form. Another thing that might help is the triangle still works when we multiply fractions. The triangle will still work when we multiply fractions. The positives and negative rules, remember, they're still the same for fractions as they were for integers. So a positive times a negative is a negative. Multiply two negatives together, you get a positive. Those are all still the same. Alright, so let's look at some examples. We've got 1/4 times 2/3, so we're going to do 1 times 2 and 4 times 3. The 1 times 2 would be 2, 4 times 3 would be 12, so it's just 2 over 12. So we do not get a common denominator, just multiply the numerators together, the denominators together. Can we divide 2 and 12 by the same thing though? By 2, so we need to do that. Divide both the top and bottom by 2. And so 2 twelfths is actually 1/6 when we simplify. We get 1 over 6. 5 over 7 times negative 3/8. So it's a positive times a negative. We know our answer is going to be negative. And then we just do 5 times 3, which is 15, over 7 times 8, which is 56. Well, actually first, can we simplify that? We can divide 15 by 3 and 5, but we can't divide 56 by 3 or 5. So that is in simplest form. Negative 15 over 56. Big thing here with fractions is make sure somehow you don't forget to put the negative sign in your answer if your answer is going to be negative. Also, one more thing before you continue on with these examples. I know some of you might have been taught in the past to do a method where you cross out, you like the 2 and the 4, they both have a 2 in common, so you can cancel out a 2 and then multiply. I don't teach that way because it ends up confusing you, and every time a student tries to do that, somewhere they make a mistake. And so I say multiply everything like you should, and then focus on simplifying at the end. That's the same thing. And you've got to do the same number of steps. It's just easier to remember to simplify at the very end. Okay? So if you were taught that to cross out things that have something in common, I'm asking you don't do that right now. Just focus on multiplying and then simplify. Okay? So if you got any questions, let me know. But you all go ahead and do the next 3. And what should we probably do with mixed numbers before we start to multiply them? Wanda? Turn the mixed numbers into improper fractions. Yes, do not forget this. Okay, so for 3/5 times 1/2, what do we get for that? Chris, what did you get?
3/10.
3/10, yeah. 3 times 1, 5 times 2. 3/10 would be our answer. Okay. So for negative 3 1/5 times negative 2 3/10, negative times a negative would get us a positive. So we know our answer is going to be positive. If that's the case, you know your answer is going to be positive. I would just forget about the negatives at this point because you know they're going to cancel out. 3 1/5 is going to be 16/5 times 2 3/10 would be 23/10. All right, so then we're just going to multiply straight across. 16 times 23 would get us, 16 times 23 is, Abdullah?
368.
368, yes. All right, so 16 times 23, you said it was 368 over 50. So if this 3, do we need to simplify 368 over 50? Yes, we do. Let's say you went ahead and just made this a mixed number, right? Which you can do that. I want to show you one thing you'll have to do. We do 368 on the inside, 50 on the outside, and we've got to figure out how many times will 50 go into 368. Do that trick I showed you, cover up the 0 and the 8. How many times does 5 go into 36? That's it. 7 times. So the 7 is going to go over that 8. 7 times 5 is 35, so 7 times 50 would be 350. We're left with 18. So as a mixed number, this would be 7 and 18 over 50. What do you notice about that 18 over 50? It can still be simplified. This is not in simplest form yet. The 7's going to stay the same. 7 doesn't change. What can we divide 18 and 50 by?
2.
By 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 50 divided by 2 is 25. So if you write your answer in simplest form, it needs to be 7 and 9/25. Now, could you have divided 368 and 50 by 2 as well, and then made it a mixed number? Just do it out of order? Yeah, you could have done that. But I wanted to show you, if you get a mixed number, always check that fraction part and see if you need to simplify any more. But in this case, we did. Okay, negative 5 1/3 times 3. Negative times a positive. We know that our answer is going to be negative. 5 1/3 would be 16 over 3. And then remember that 3, if we want to make it look like a fraction, we would do 3 over 1. And then multiply straight across. That's going to get us negative 48 over 3. 48 and 3 can be divided by something. What can they both be divided by? Abdullah? Divide them both by 3. You're going to get negative 16 over 1. Or we could just write that as negative 16. So negative 16 would be our answer there. Any questions? Really, the only new thing that we haven't talked about this year is multiplying fractions. But if you remember, multiply the top numbers by each other, the bottom numbers by each other. The positive and negative rules are still the same. Turning a mixed number to an improper fraction still the same. Simplifying still the same. Okay? So let's look at a few different word problems. Let's find 1/4 of 7/8. So anytime you see a question and it says find this of that, that word of means to multiply. So anytime, whether it's a question like this or whether it's a word problem and it says find a half of, how many cups they drink or whatever. Of means you multiply. So we're just going to write this as 1/4 times 7/8. And then multiply straight across. So 1 times 7 and 4 times 8. We get 7/32. And we can't simplify that anymore, so that would be our answer. 7/32. Okay, next one. Humans sleep about 1/3 of each day. So we're going to let each year equal 365 and 1/4 days. We're going to figure out how many days in a year the average human sleeps. Okay? If you, let's say, if you sleep 8 hours, we're going to see how many days out of the year you actually sleep. So 8 hours is about 1/3 of each day. Anybody get 8 hours of sleep? 6 hours, 30 minutes. That's what I get usually, yeah.
I get 7 hours.
7 hours, yeah. So we're going to take 1/3. If you go to bed at 11 and wake up at 7, that's 8 hours. So go to bed at 10, wake up at 6, that's 8 hours. Over the weekend, you guys probably get a lot more than 8 hours of sleep. Yeah. All right, with 365 and 1/4, what do we need to do with that before we can multiply it? Make it what? Improper fraction. So 365 times 4. See what that gets us. $1,460. Don't forget though, we also need to add that 1 to it. So it's going to be 1,461 over 4. And now we multiply straight across. So 1 times 1,461 would just stay 1,461. 3 times 4 would get us 12. So when you get something like that, I don't know if you can divide 1461 and 12 by the same thing. So I would just go straight into make this a mixed number. Okay? So let's divide over here. So 12 goes into 1,400, or 12 goes into 14 once. Subtract 12, we're left with 26. 12 goes into 26 twice. Subtract 24, we're left with 2. And then 12 goes into 21 one time. And if we were to subtract 12, I'm running out of room, we would be left with 9. Okay? So write that as our mixed number. It'd be 121 and 9/12. Do we need to do anything else?
Yeah.
Kiana, what do we need to do then?
Simplify.
Yeah, 9 and 12 can both be divided by 3. So divide 9 and 12 by 3. And it's going to be 121 and 3/4 days. So if you get an average of 8 hours of sleep each night, you sleep away 121 and 3/4 days of the year. Seems like a lot more when you think about it that way, doesn't it? All right, any questions? Huh? It is 1/3 of the year, yep. If you sleep 1/3 of the day every day of the year, it would be 1/3 of the year. Good job, Vincent. All right, you guys go ahead and do these last two. Okay, for this first one, find 2/5 of -1/9. Just write it exactly how it says. 2/5 times -1/9. Okay, so what is that going to get us? Charlie, what do we get there?
2/45.
Yep, and negative or positive? Yeah, positive times a negative.
Negative.
-2/45. Okay? And then this last one, Mel rode 289 1/3 miles. His father rode 3/4 as far as he did. So we want to multiply. We're trying to find out what is 3/4 of 289 1/3. Remember, of means we multiply. So we're going to do 289 1/3 times 3/4. So 289 times 3 would give us 867. What needs to go over the 3 though in our improper fraction? Is it 867 over 3? 868. Do not forget to add that 1 from the 1/3. 868 over 3 times 3/4. Multiply straight across. 868 times 3 is going to be what, Abdullah?
2,604.
Yes, 2,604. So you get 2,604 over 12. So now let's go ahead and just make that a mixed number, because you might like what you see whenever you do that. So 12 goes into 26 twice. Subtract 24, we're left with 2. Pull down the 0. 12 goes into 20 once. Subtract the 12, we're left with 8. Pull down that 4. 12 goes into 84. 7 times. What's our remainder when we're finished with that? 0. So that means, do we need to have a fraction? If it's 217 and 0 over 12, do we need to put that 0 over 12 there? So it's just going to be 217 miles exactly. So if you get a remainder of 0, it's just going to be that whole number. We don't need to worry about writing the fraction part in a mixed number there. Okay, questions on multiplying fractions? The biggest thing is just going to be make sure that you simplify correctly. Some bigger numbers sometimes. But here are the questions for today. A lot of them should go fairly quickly as you get started on those.